Part 147. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1461. Mrs. Tang looked at Man Bao for a while, then suddenly tapped her forehead and said with a smile, "After all, you know everything when you grow up. Let me ask you, is it true that Tang's He is called an actor?" Man Bao immediately raised two fingers and swore, "This is what Bai Shan and the others saw when they passed the Zhuangyuan building. It is absolutely true. At that time, there were actors in the box of Tang Xuexiang and the others, and they were still lying at the window with Bai Shan. Shan and the others greeted them and asked them to go out for a drink together, but Bai Shan and the others were in a hurry to go home, so they were not free. Bai Erlang talked about it for a long time after he went back, because he was really interested. At that time, he even heard the above singing downstairs, and he thought it was very nice. Bai Shan was also very interested, and even made an appointment with Man Bao to go to the Zhuangyuan building next time, so they could pool money together to ask the actors to perform, or go directly to the Chunfeng building. I heard that the performances in Chunfenglu are much cheaper. Madame Tang gritted her teeth and put Man Bao down after she reached the fork. She said, "It's a pity that you have been in the palace every day recently, otherwise I can invite you to see cousin Kui together. Mrs. Yang was 3 months pregnant, and it was announced a while ago. Recently, she was raising a baby in Yang's house, and she didn't go out easily." After thinking about it, Man Bao said, "Wait for a while. When I'm free, I'll invite my sister-in-law to see her together." Mrs. Tang smiled and replied okay, and when her carriage left, she put down the carriage, and the smile on her face disappeared. The girl on the side sat with her head lowered, not daring to let out the air. Madame Tang touched her nails and asked, "I suddenly remembered that Dr. Zhou Xiaodao has been entering the palace every day for more than a month." "Yes, the last time Mrs. Shangxi asked her servants to give Dr. Zhou Xiao a red egg, Dr. Zhou went into the palace. I heard that he entered the palace every day and never stopped," she said. "Therefore, the consultation at the church has been postponed to the afternoon, and now it is difficult for every family to invite her for a consultation. It is said that she wants to teach a few apprentices in Shitang, and she has no time to visit the doctor for a while, unless it is an emergency or not her. It's an unacceptable disease, otherwise she won't be diagnosed." "What is the disease that must be hers?" "That is naturally a disease that a woman can't speak of, but if it's not particularly urgent, I'm afraid I won't be able to invite her at this time." Madame Tang didn't know what to think, and she went home in silence. When Madame Tang left, Master Tang breathed a sigh of relief, wiped the non-existent sweat on his forehead, and hurriedly greeted Shangshu. Feng Shangshu asked with a smile, "Why, I was scolded by my daughter-in-law again." Master Tang categorically denied, "How could a good wife scold an official? She came to bring me tea and some clothes for Madame Ho. The adults also know that Madame Ho and his wife are related. In fact, it was her aunt who was separated by several rooms, but in the end she was of the same clan." Madame Tang also felt that she was wronged. She thought that now the Ho family had been copied, and their life and death were still uncertain, so they gave her something, which was also an attitude. Officers and soldiers will not insult them. You must know that the family members of criminal officials have no dignity at all. When people are locked in the mansion, who knows what will happen? As soon as Mrs. Tang left, Master Tang waited for all the items in the mansion to be checked out, and everything that should be moved was emptied before entering with a package. The people of the Ho family were all locked in the same courtyard. At this moment, it didn't matter who the master was. He handed over the package prepared by Mrs. Tang to Mrs. Ho. Madame Ho took the package, and Darren Tang said, "The people from Jingzhou Mansion are guarding the outside. The case is still under investigation. Madame might as well wait patiently for a while." Only then did Mrs. Ho cry out, and she was very happy with her two granddaughters in her arms. Even if he will be beheaded in the end, at least he doesn't have to be humiliated during this time, otherwise he might as well just die immediately. Master Tang sighed, then turned to leave, so that the soldiers guarding outside could not bully the people in the courtyard. Master Tang was very busy, and he didn't come home until it was almost dark. He said something to his father and went back to his yard. Madame Tang was waiting for him. He was a little trembling, but he still entered. As soon as she entered, Madame Tang grabbed her ears and pulled it into the inner room. Master Tang screamed aloud, his head fell down in coordination, and quickly said, "Madam, madam, that's Joe Man, what are you eating with her?" "Vinegar." When the servants saw that they were making trouble, they backed out with a smile and closed the door for them. Madame Tang pulled Master Tang into the room, twisted his arm several times to relieve her anger, and asked, "I ask you, what did you say to her quietly?" "It's nothing, it's just a few gossip, that's a child, I'm not crazy about your husband." As soon as Mrs. Tang heard this, she knew that he was perfunctory her, and asked with a sneer, "Are you asking her if the crown princess is pregnant?" Master Tang was choked on his saliva and coughed violently in fright. He hurriedly looked out and saw that the servants all retreated far away. Then he leaned into Mrs. Tang's ear and asked in a low voice, "How did you know, what did she say?" Madame Tang said calmly, "Guess." Master Tang just sat down on the feet in front of the bed, and whispered, "Don't spread the word about this." Madame Tang frowned and said, "We can guess it, but can't anyone guess it?" Master Tang said, "I'm afraid I can't think of this for a while, and I have to wait for a while." He said, "After the prince's poisoning case came out, people outside always thought that she entered the palace every day to detoxify the prince. Only he and Lord Yin knew that the prince's poison had been solved long ago. The reason why he thought of it was that he found something wrong when he reviewed the case last night. In the past month or so, the prince seems to have been much quieter, and he even remembered using the Chongquen Museum as an excuse to recruit talents. And after careful calculation, Zhou Man seems to have been in the palace for 54 consecutive days, and the prince has an acupuncture every other day, so what does she do in the palace every day?" Master Tang whispered, "These are all guesses by us. I didn't even tell my father." "Don't say it outside." "I know, I'm not stupid." Madame Tang pulled her hand away from his and asked, "Let's talk about this actor." Master Tang just lay down and shouted, "I'm so hungry, ma'am, I'm tired and hungry now, and I can't move." At this time, Man Bao was opening the medicine bag that Daji brought back, pouring all the medicine inside into a large pot, then adding water and boiling it. Friday Lang personally rolled a tank and brought it back to her, and asked, "Why do you want this tank?" Man Bao said, "Bubble stones." After pouring the boiled potion into the jar, she moved all the stones that teacher Mo gave her into the jar and soaked it, and a large group of people followed along to join in the fun. Even if he knew that the stone was poisonous, Bai Erlang couldn't help but come to watch, and when he saw buckets of potions poured into the stone, he was confused. "Is that all right?" Man Bao nodded, "It's enough to seal it for another 7 days. See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1462. She calmly appeased everyone and said, "Don't worry, there is no poison leaking out of the stone soaked in the potion, and everyone can play in the garden to their heart's content." Bai Shan, who knew that the stone had been replaced. "This tank is currently placed in a corner of the garden, deliberately placed away from their room." Hearing what Man Bao said, even Bai Dalan was relieved, and he followed closely to look at the stone that had been submerged in the potion, and asked, "Didn't you say it will glow? It is rumored that anyone who sees light will have eyes turned green, and then gradually went blind, and I didn't seem to see the light just now." Man Bao, "Is it so bizarre in just 1 day's work?" But Bai Shan immediately said with a serious face, "Did the big brother not see the light? I saw it just now." After rolling around the tank, I happened to see that they poured the first bucket of potion first, and then put the stone in it. He was silent for a while, and seeing everyone was puzzled, no one helped them out, so he could only say, "I see the light too." Daji only said this dryly, but he has never spoken much, so everyone subconsciously believed him when he opened his mouth. Baidalan even directly admitted his mistake, "That's probably my mistake." The potion was dark at the moment, and Manbao was not very particular about it. Even Mr. Zhuan came over to take a look curiously, but there was nothing he could do. Today, the Ho family was copied, and the story of Ho Jixia poisoning the prince and rebelling had spread all over the capital. It may be because the rebellion of the king of Yazhu hasn't passed long, and the people in the capital don't pay much attention to the rebellion, and everyone is discussing more about Hoji's use of gems to poison the prince. I heard that the gem is very poisonous, or it fell from the sky. There are rumors about it outside, even Zhou Lixu and the others can hear various versions. Although Man Bao also wants to go out and chat with someone to brag, she is really busy. Man Bao took 3 medicines and sent them to the 3 patients. At this time, they were still living in Jingzhou Mansion and were closely guarded. They can come out when the verdict is over. Man Bao watched them take the medicine, and gave them the prescription. "This is for you to condition your body, it is somewhat useful, you can try it." The 3 looked confused and could not understand what Zhou Man said. Master Tang came in from the door and said, "They are not used to Mandarin." He stretched out his hand to take the prescription and said, "Give this to me." He folded the prescription, looked down at the man lying on the bed, and asked, "His body?" Man Bao said, "It won't last for a few days, but taking the antidote will make him feel better." Master Tang nodded and said, "I found His Royal Highness, and His Highness also took pity on them, so I sent a team to follow, and they will send the medicine back to Jiaokang together, and it will take about 45 days at the earliest." Man Bao said, "Let them come to my house in the afternoon to get the medicine." She paused and said, "Shuexiang Tang, if Gao Chang still has stones left behind, please bring them back to detoxify me, otherwise it will be very dangerous to leave these poisonous stones." Master Tang smiled and nodded. Seeing that Man Bao was about to leave, Master Tang suddenly said, "Speaking of Jiaokang, there are actually not many records in the library building in the Quazijian. Except for the Imperial Palace, the ones with the most records are Duke Huguo's mansion and Yang's mansion. Maybe you can ask Changbo." "Ask." Man Bao couldn't help but look back at him. "Don't Shuexiang Tang still send someone to watch us right now?" "That's not true, am I such a disrespectful person?" Master Tang said with a smile. "I ran into Lu Huan's carriage on the way home yesterday, and he complained that Bai Shan dragged them to look for Gao Chang in the library, causing harm to him. He had to dream at night that he was buried in yellow sand." Man Bao, that must be a cliché, otherwise why would Lu Huan talk about it for no reason? But she didn't ask any further questions. After thinking about it, she simply followed the topic and said, "Brother, why don't we go to the restaurant and sit together and talk while eating?" Master Tang said, "Didn't you just come out from the palace for lunch?" "I'm hungry again." "Hungry so fast?" But Master Tang went with her. The two sat down face to face in a restaurant not far from Jingzhou Mansion. 2 days have passed since Hoji was arrested, and the two finally sat down and had a frank conversation. Man Bao said, "Shuexiang Tang, I have carefully looked at the section of the stone shell. Apart from it, there should be other stones that fell. Although they are not necessarily in the same pit, they should be not far apart. They all found it?" Master Tang asked, "What are you doing with these stones?" He smiled and said, "Don't say it's just detoxification, I don't believe it. How many people in this world think of detoxifying a stone?" And I asked, "You only take some discarded medicinal materials from the pharmacy back, and they are mixed together." "Everything." Man Bao said, part of the antidote comes from stones. Man Bao said half-truths and half-truths, and said with a serious face, I really want to detoxify, and my brother also saw how miserable the poisoned people are. I didn't take the poison stone very much to my heart when the prince appeared before. Although I know the stone is not good, but because I have never seen the tragic condition of the poisoned person, I don't take it to heart. But I saw the people from Gaochang, and I can't do it if I turn a blind eye. Man Bao raised his head and looked at him seriously. Brother, I want to find all those poisonous stones, and then refine and detoxify them. Medicine. Master Tang was stunned for a moment, then he believed it. Because her appearance is very similar to Yang Heshu when he mentioned that the world's granaries should be filled, and the people would be free from famine. After thinking for a moment, he said, Master Yin is using the emergency military information channel to spread the news to Jiao. I can speak nonsense and can only communicate with Jiao people reluctantly. If you want to know more secret things, either ask Yang Heshu to come. I'll be your translator, or you can go and ask your highness to find you an official who can speak nonsense. I can't give you a map, Master Tang continued, that's an important thing in Bianzhen, don't tell you about it, it's a crime of beheading to show you a glance, don't rummage around in the library, don't give it to you. Speaking of Jiao, all those with maps were taken to the palace and hidden in the early days of the founding of the People's Republic of China. These are all very practical suggestions, thanks to Man Bao again and again. But Master Tang looked up at her and smiled. Man Bao was inexplicable. What are you laughing at, brother? I suddenly remembered something. It was also yesterday. After I met Lu Huan gave me a post, and Bai Shan asked me to have dinner together in the evening. Master Tang reached out and patted her on the head, sighing, you are comparable. He's a bit of a fool, yes, yes. Man Bao. See you tomorrow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1463. Master Tang personally took someone to get the potion from Changqing Lane. Man Bao divided the potion into 3 parts and sealed it in the jar. Seeing that Master Tang was looking at him curiously, he stuffed a pot into his arms. Go. Well, be careful, the medicine is rare, don't break it. Master Tang turned and handed it over to someone to carefully seal it up, and then asked, I saw it was blue just now, is the medicine actually blue? Man Bao said, the 3 of them should be getting better, right? Yes, the doctor said that the situation has improved a lot, and the antidote is useful. Master Tang asked after pondering for a while, we have also come into contact with this poisonous stone recently, we. Man Bao turned around and went back to the house, took 10 porcelain vases out, and said, there are 100 copies in total, 90 copies are sealed in the jar, and these 10 copies are handed over to the person who escorts the stones along the way. As for you, you have been in contact for a few days. I don't need to take medicine, just jump a bit, sweat, and the body will excrete it after a decade or 2, but don't have children in the same room during this time, because it may affect the children. Master Tang. Master Tang took the 10 porcelain vases. There were only 8 people who escorted Poison Stone and the witnesses back. It seemed that Man Bao knew very well, so he prepared 2 more copies. Master Tang quickly sent the 2 extra antidote to the palace. The emperor did not ask how he arranged the rest of the antidote. The prince sent someone to deliver the antidote to Jiao, and he also agreed to find the remaining poison stones by the way. He opened the porcelain bottle, glanced at the potion inside, thought about it, and announced Xiao Yuanzheng. Xiao Yuanzheng took half the bottle to study, and the rest of the emperor put away. Zhou Man is reluctant to tell the prescription, he can't force others to hand it over, there are many secret recipes in each family, especially the background of the wealthy family. This kind of thing, aristocratic families can do it secretly, but as an emperor, it is absolutely impossible to do it, otherwise it will set a precedent, and there will be endless troubles in the future. So not only could he not do it, but he also had to make sure that others couldn't force Zhou Man to come up with a prescription. After receiving the porcelain vase, the emperor said to Guzhong, "Let the inner government make Zhou Man a set of 5 great official uniforms and send it to him." Guzhong was stunned for a moment and then said, "Your Majesty, Dr. Zhou Xiao has not been appointed an official, this." The emperor said, "It's her business whether she accepts the official seal or not, but this official uniform is given. Doesn't she want to reset the imperial physician's office? Give her the official uniform first." Guzhong's eyes flashed, and he immediately lowered his head. The emperor has a lot of things to do. Now it is spring sowing time. Some places have shown a trend of less water and drought, while some places have too much rain, and the seedlings that have just been planted are washed away by the water. Farming was not going well, and Hoji was involved in several cases, and the ministers in the DPRK and China were not in a good mood. Even the emperor lost his temper in the court for 2 days in a row. At this time, King Gong brought a group of troops to Beijing by edict, and he remanded the people Haoji sent to Luozhu twice. Then he entered the palace with his forefoot, and just knelt down to greet his father, but before he had time to get up, a servant rushed in and congratulated him, "Your Majesty, the East Palace is happy." The one who ran in to report was a young eunuch from the East Palace. With a happy expression on his face, he said excitedly, "Your Majesty, the crown princess was not feeling well this morning, so I asked the imperial doctor." The imperial doctor said that the crown princess has been pregnant for more than 2 months. The emperor already knew, but he didn't expect the prince to choose to reveal it at this time, but he still cooperated with a happy smile. Then a bunch of voices ordered people to send gifts to the East Palace. But the ministers in the room and Prince Gong, who was still kneeling on the ground, were struck by lightning, so shocked that they forgot to speak. The emperor has already sent people to give gifts to the East Palace, and when he turned his head and saw that his lovers opened their mouths in surprise, he became a little complacent and said with a smile, "The prince has been married for many years, and finally has a son. I finally have a son. I'm going to be a grandfather, ha 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 ha." Li Shangshu and others heard the words and immediately returned to congratulate the emperor. In particular, Zhao Qiuagong, who was planning to enter the palace to mediate, was even more happy to speak openly with the emperor, "Your Majesty, let's have a good drink in the evening." The emperor also liked drinking with his uncle and brother, so he readily agreed. Wei Ji frowned below, really wanting to take the opportunity to help Zhao Qiuagong bring down the emperor, but seeing that the emperor was so happy that his eyes narrowed with joy, he endured it. "Forget it, see you tomorrow." Prince Gong fell to the ground in a daze. He pursed his lips when he heard the emperor say that he was finally going to be a grandfather. Isn't his son his grandson? Just thinking about it, the emperor has noticed him, sighed and raised his hand to let him get up. Because the East Palace suddenly broke out a happy event, not to mention the ministers, even the emperor who already knew about the matter was not in the mood to listen to King Gong's report about Hoji at this time. Prince Gong also suddenly lost the mood to distinguish, so everyone dispersed like an anticlimactic. The people brought by King Gong were first handed over to the Ministry of Punishment and Dali Temple for custody, and King Gong himself went back to the palace to wait. Prince Gong had just entered the palace, and left the palace in less than half an hour. His eyes were still a little red. He sat blankly in the palace in front of the vassal, feeling so wronged in his heart. When Prince Gong's staff heard the news in the palace, they were silent for a while, then regained their energy and said, "Don't worry, Your Highness, it's only more than 2 months, and there are still more than 7 months before the birth, Crown Prince. Infertility, the child may not be healthy, and it is not necessarily male or female." Seeing that Prince Gong remained silent, his staff continued to make persistent efforts. Your Highness, you should still deal with the matter of Haoji at this time. You are completely wronged in this matter, and you took the initiative to take the person of Haoji. Please be more sincere, Your Majesty will definitely believe you. The staff said a lot, but Prince Gong was dumbfounded, and he didn't know how much he heard. At this time, the prince, who had just let the imperial doctor leave, snorted coldly as he looked at the various supplements sent to the East Palace like flowing water. Isn't it just intrigue? Who doesn't? It should have been announced after 3 months of pregnancy, but the prince and the concubine discussed it and felt that the announcement was the best time. So, this morning, the crown princess accidentally felt dizzy and nauseous, and then she stared at the city gate. Before King Gong entered the capital, they began to go to the imperial hospital to find an imperial doctor. When King Gong entered the palace, the people who announced the good news also began to go to the Taiji Hall. After that, they no longer deliberately controlled it, so the news of the princess' pregnancy spread almost instantly throughout the palace, and then flew outside the palace. First, the emperor sent people a lot of rewards, and then the queen, and the queen mother was only one step behind the queen. The 3 most important masters in the palace showed their attitude with their actions, so the people in the palace were all cautious, and no one dared to look for bad luck in the East Palace at this moment. Just as the news was flying outside the palace, the prince very generously pointed to a pile of things and Man Bao said, "You can choose whatever you want, and I'll just treat you at that time." Man Bao politely declined 1 or 2, "It's not good, after all, it was your majesty and the 2 empresses who gave this to the crown princess." The prince thought about it and nodded, "Yes, it's not suitable." Man Bao. The prince remembered something, was very happy, and smiled, "I remember, when I asked you to go to the palace to see the queen mother, I said that as long as you can save the queen, I will give you 500 gold. It just so happened that this time I'll reward you with it." After that, he turned to look at Eunuch Wu, who was beside him. Eunuch Wu immediately smiled and held a box and stepped forward. "See you at 4 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl." Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1464. He opened the box and handed it over, and Man Bao saw several sheets of paper inside. The prince raised his chin and said, "This is a house in Kongai Yuanfang, right on Days Street. I will reward you." Man Bao was stunned. Eunuch Wu immediately closed the box with a smile, pushed Man Bao and said in a low voice, "Dr. Zhou, thank you very soon. This house was given to the prince by my uncle in the early years, and there is a garden in this house, which is full of its plum blossoms, because the prince likes plum blossoms, so my uncle specially gave this house to the prince." "I'm so sorry." Man Bao said halfway through, suddenly afraid that the prince would talk again. He immediately took the box and saluted, "But if the prince gave it, I would rather obey it. Thank the prince for the reward." The princess on the side couldn't help laughing. This is because she cured the crown prince and gave the crown princess a gift of thanks. As for the gold, of course, it is not something that Man Bao can handle, and someone will carry it to Changqing Lane later. Man Bao didn't prescribe medicine for the crown princess, but left some meal lists for her. She said, "My lady has a girl who knows how to prepare. Normally I shouldn't do anything else, but I still have to tell the lady not to eat it. For the supplements, I gave you a prescription before. You have a good foundation, and the child seems to be very healthy now, so you just need to pay more attention to nutrition on weekdays." Then he said to the prince, "Your illness is also cured. In the future, pay attention to rest, don't stay up late to drink, and don't indulge your desires." The prince who drinks and indulges can still control himself, but it is not up to him to decide whether to stay up late or not. Now all the civil and military officials of the Manchu dynasty knew that the prince should not drink alcohol. Because the descendants were involved, the emperor showed his attitude again, so no one dared to ask the prince for a banquet since half a year ago. But if there are too many official duties, and he wants to help the emperor manage his affairs, he will definitely have to stay up all night, which is beyond his control. After Man Bao made a doctor's order, it means that she will not enter the palace from tomorrow. If they have any problems in the future, they can send someone to call her, and she will come back to the palace. After the prince's illness is cured, Man Bao naturally does not need to enter the palace, and the imperial concubine's conditioning is still the responsibility of the imperial hospital. However, the crown princess had already made a secret decision that she would still bring Man Baizao into the palace to ask for a pulse every once in a while. Compared with the imperial doctor of the imperial hospital, she trusts Man Bao more. And Man Bao can touch her stomach. Can the imperial doctors do it? The crown prince and crown prince asked eunuch Wu to send Man Bao out of the palace. In addition to the house in Kongai Yuanfang and the 500 gold promised in advance, the crown princess also gave Man Bao a lot of other things. They are all fabrics and jewelry commonly used by women, as well as some china that she thinks is good. After Man Bao left the palace, the rewards of the emperor and the queen also left the palace and went to Changqing Lane. After hearing this, the queen mother of the harem drank a sip of tea, thought for a while, and said, "Go to the storeroom to choose some cloth utensils that we don't need, and reward her as well." The palace maid hurriedly responded. The queen mother asked, "How is the preparation of Yunfan's dowry?" "Everything is ready as you ordered." The queen mother nodded. "In that case, let's be precise about the appointment. She is not too young, so it would be better to get married earlier." But in fact, the Yunfan County Lord is only a few months older than the Changjiao County Lord. Now the Changjiao County Lord has not yet decided on a marriage, and the Yunfan County Lord is about to get married. But the Queen Mother didn't want to stay Yunfan County Master anymore. It's not that she doesn't love her, on the contrary, she just loves her and let her marry earlier. The Crown Princess is pregnant, and the Crown Prince's position is stable. Similarly, Zhou Man's position is also stable. Even the Queen Mother endured disgust and treated Zhou Man with courtesy for the sake of the prince and the future of Shiji, but Yunfan still couldn't understand the situation. The Queen Mother also heard about the incident in the Imperial Garden last time. It's okay if she can't control her attitude towards Zhou Man, but she is even rebellious towards the Crown Princess, and if she keeps her in the palace, I'm afraid she will not spoil her, but hurt her. Every time I think of these, the Queen Mother will think of the King of Yizhu, and she is not without regrets. If she had noticed these things he did sooner, maybe it would not have been possible earlier. After the Queen Mother asked Zhou Menyi to reward her, she turned around and asked the Emperor to tell the Emperor that Yunfan County Master was going to choose a date to get married. So the Emperor, who was thinking about what to do with the third son, was divided by another point. Man Bao knew nothing of this, and as soon as she got on the carriage, she opened the box and looked at the deed inside. This is not the first time she has seen the house deed. There are house deeds in the two shops she bought at home and the things her own parents left her. But it was the first time she had seen such a beautiful deed. It seemed that the deed sent by the prince was bigger than the one she bought herself. Man Bao happily looked at the address on the deed and wanted to take a look at the house now. But after thinking about the gold and various gifts transported in the carriage behind, she endured it. As soon as she got back to Changqing Lane, she immediately knocked on the door to let them move things in, then ran into the backyard like a bird, rushed directly to the study, and shouted to Mr. Zhuang, "Sir, I'm back, ha ha ha." Mr. Zhuang was so frightened that his hands trembled. He glanced down at the badly written words, he put down the pen, couldn't help laughing and asked, "Why are you so happy?" Man Bao said very happily, "Prince Concubine is pregnant, and the Crown Prince's illness has also been cured. I don't need to enter the palace in the future. I can study with my husband, and I can also go to Ji Shitang to sit in the hall again." Man Bao narrowed his eyes. "The prince also gave me a house, gold, and various gifts." Mr. Zhuang was astonished and asked, "Is the Crown Princess pregnant?" Man Bao nodded, Eunuch Wu said that the emperor and the empress will also reward me with things. With so many things, my house will definitely not fit. Mr. Zhuang asked, how long have you been pregnant? Man Bao, more than 2 months. Mr. Zhuang looked at the disciple for a while, and then praised her, yes, this time I can bear my temper. Since she has been pregnant for more than 2 months, and she hasn't shown a trace before she goes out today, it can be seen that she can still hold back her words. Mr. Zhuang knew how rare this was for a talkative person, so he reached out and patted her on the head, and praised, yes, our Man Bao has grown up. Man Bao felt that her husband had underestimated her, and secretly said, she has had a secret since she was a child. No one except Keek knows the secret, so she has not been able to tell it. Keek, who held Xiao Qian's hand when she was a child and said that there was a fairy living in her body and that she would give her delicious candy. Man Bao can't remember such a long time ago. She tried to bring the topic back on track. Sir, the prince has rewarded me with a lot of things. Only then did Mr. Zhuang notice this, and asked with a smile, what did you reward you for? Man Bao. In the last chapter, I modified some things. The princess should be pregnant for more than 2 months. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1465. Man Bao stepped forward and pulled Mr. Zhuang out. There was no way. Xiang Mingxiu and the others were not there. Now, only Mr. Zhuang and Daji and his wife are at home. Eunuch Wu asked people to bring in boxes and various gift boxes. Man Bao opened the box containing the gold, and when he opened it, the gold was shining brightly, and Mr. Zhuang was stunned for a while. 12 and 1 ingots of gold filled a small box, with a total of 50 ingots. It was also the first time for Man Bao to see so much gold, and he thought it was particularly beautiful in yellow and orange. She grabbed a handful and shoved one directly to Mr. Zhuang. Sir, it's for you. Mr. Zhuang caught it and said stunned, what are you going to do for me with gold? Man Bao tilted his head and thought for a while, then shook his head, I don't know, anyway, I want to give it to me if I'm happy. Sir, take it for tea. Mr. Zhuang smiled and put the gold back, and said, you don't need gold for tea. You keep this and buy a house as a dowry in the future. Man Bao couldn't help sighing, if only my father was here. If her father was here, she would give him 1 ingot, and he would be very happy to think about it if he could reach out and ask for 10. Mr. Zhuang couldn't help laughing, if you miss your father, just send a letter to the house. It just so happens that Erlang wants to send a letter to the house, so I ask him to send it together. Man Bao nodded and decided to write a letter in a while. Eunuch Wu only brought everything in, and the talent left the alley, and the emperor's chamberlain sent something again. The residents of Changqing Lane were stunned. From the end of last year to this year, they have seen many people from the government and the palace come and go here. They already knew that there was an able-bodied family living in the opposite door, not only the students in the Kuazijian, but also a little genius doctor. Especially the little genius doctor, not only some dignitaries, but also the emperors and concubines in the palace sent things here from time to time. But it is the first time that I have sent things here 4 times in a row like today, and I have sent so many things. Unlike receiving gifts from the crown prince and concubine, she received the gifts in the palace and thanked them, but the gifts from the emperor and the others were sent directly here. Therefore, Man Bao can only set up the incense table to receive the decree, receive the gift, and thank him, only then does he send the person away, and he will receive the decree, receive the gift, and thank him later. When Bai Shan and the others came back from school, Man Bao had just sent off the servants in the Queen Mother's palace. Then a group of people followed to look at the things piled up in the whole yard. Zhou Lixiu said dumbly, there are so many things, Auntie, can't you put them in your room? Zhou Ligu said, it's okay to squeeze. Didn't you receive a lot of gifts before, and I didn't see my aunt talking about squeezing. However, Zhou Liru often went into the ant's room. Hearing the words, he said dumbly, "Yes, and why didn't I think that you put a lot less in the room?" Man Bao waved, "I'm hiding." Man Bao doesn't care about other things, but she must hold that box of gold by herself. There are also jewelry, which are also very valuable and easy to cash in. But the easiest thing to realize is cloth, which can be spent directly as money. With this calculation, it seems that most of the things will be stuffed into the system space. Man Bao felt that this was not good, and was planning which ones to put in Zhou Liru's room temporarily, and which ones to put away in her room, when Bai Shan opened a box and asked, "What is this?" Man Bao turned his head to see it, and was immediately surprised. "Yes, I was so happy to see Jin Zi that I forgot. The prince even gave me a house. Let's take a look at the house." Bai Shan asked, "Where is the house?" Before Man Bao could answer, he had already seen the address on the deed, Kongai Yuanfang Days Street. He silently raised his head to look at Man Bao, and Bai Dalan, who also ran over to join in the fun after school, was also startled. Mr. Zhuang looked at Man Bao in surprise. The others looked dazed and asked, "What's wrong?" Bai Shan folded up the house deed, put the house deed into the box, and said quietly, "Nothing, I just thought of a sentence. It's not easy to live in the capital, and it seems a little difficult to buy a big house." Man Bao said, "Why buy such a big house?" Bai Shan nodded again and again, "I also think it's not good that the house is too big." But when they appeared together in front of the house in Kongai Yuanfang, Man Bao felt that he had to take back what he said yesterday. "Knowing that my sister has a house, I closed the shop for a day to identify the place, and by the way, I cleaned the house for them to move." Wu Lang and others stood in front of the door, looked up at the blank plaque on the door, and stayed together. Opened his mouth wide. In addition to Bai Shan and Mr. Zhuang who had already prepared, even Bai Dalan, who had already vaguely guessed something, also opened his mouth, not to mention Man Bao and others. Mrs. Lu helped Mrs. Zheng's hand to get out of the car. She also looked up at the gate, then turned to look at the quiet and wide streets around her, and said with a smile, "It's a good place." Zheng Shi also nodded in surprise, "Isn't it a good place?" Back then, when she accompanied her husband to study in Beijing, the eldest branch of the Bai family still had a house in the capital, and they came to Kongai Yuanfang when they came to visit. It's not easy to get in, and the cost of the capital is increasing day by day, so I can only go back to Longzhou with my family. But the house is still there, and it doesn't seem to be very far from here. It's been almost 20 years, her memory is not very good, she almost forgot where she was. Man Bao swallowed and turned his head to confirm with Bai Shan, "Is this written on the deed?" Bai Shan nodded firmly, "This is it." Zhou Lixiu was about to move. "Little aunt, where is the key? I'll open the door." Bai Erlang finally regained his senses and shouted, "What key do you want? There must be servants in such a house, just knock on the door." After he said that, he jumped up. Zhou Lixiu and Zhou Legu were stunned for a moment before chasing after him, grabbing him from left to right. Zhou Lejun also grabbed his back collar quickly, and shouted, "It's not your knock if you want to knock." Before he finished speaking, Bai Shan had already dragged Man Bao past them and rushed forward. He raised his hand and banged on the door. Zhou Lejun and others who still want to grab the jackpot. After Bai Shan knocked on the door, he raised his eyebrows contentedly and looked at them behind him. Bai Erlang and the others also rushed up. Seeing that the door hadn't been opened, he couldn't help but said, "Is there no one there? Do you want to climb the wall and go in to open the door?" Seeing them being so naughty, Mrs. Lu couldn't help but smiled and shook her head. There was a sound inside the door, everyone immediately held their breath, and then the door slowly opened in front of their eyes. When the concierge opened the door, he was a little stunned to see so many people. The two sides looked at each other for a long time before Man Bao finally said, "This is my house." The concierge was stunned for a moment and then said, "Are you the genius Dr. Zhou Xiao?" He looked at the group of people behind her, did not open the door, but asked cautiously, "Well, no one brought you here, the deed?" Man Bao immediately took out the house deed and showed it to him. When the concierge saw the deed, he immediately smiled, opened the door, and welcomed them in. Because of the presence of outsiders, everyone looked at the door, although their eyes were shining, but they were restrained, and they still stood outside the door and looked at the concierge. See you at 8 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1466. The concierge was also very happy and felt that he could leave. He immediately took out a large number of keys that were strung together from his body and respectfully handed them over to Man Baidao. "Zhou Xiaoshen, this is the prince's other hospital. The children have always been look, after eunuch Wu came to send a message 2 days ago, the younger ones even cleaned the inside and outside. This is the key to each door, you see," he said. "Let Xiao lead you around, or..." Wu Wulang had already squeezed in from the outside, reached out and took the key and said, "No, we can see for ourselves, you go first." The concierge immediately turned around happily and entered the concierge, picked up the baggage that he had packed earlier and slipped away. This house is said to be the prince's other courtyard, but since it was given to the prince, except for the first year that the prince remembered to entertain guests here, the prince forgot about this house at other times. It is said that there are always people left, but in fact it is only a family who guards the gate and the yard. It was said 2 days ago that the prince of this house was going to be given away, and a group of palace servants were sent to clean the house inside and outside. By the way, the illegal things were taken away, and his parents left with them at that time. This is a rare opportunity. Otherwise, if they stay in this house forever, I am afraid they will not be able to make a living. Although they do not need to make a lot of money, it is better than staying in this house. The master can't remember a visit for several years. Okay. The servants don't rely on much monthly money, especially they are responsible for food and clothing here. Basically, the monthly money is enough for food and clothing, and life is not as good as living in Huangchuang. So as soon as Man Bao and the others came, he handed over the keys, immediately packed up and ran away. Ha 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 ha, he is going back to the East Palace too. As soon as the concierge left, everyone immediately looked into the door. Man Bao raised his legs to cross the threshold, but for some reason, he stepped on the threshold with one foot, and she simply stepped on it with both feet. This threshold is really high. Ah! Mrs. Lu and Mr. Zhuang who are standing behind. Before the two of them spoke, Friday Lang slapped her off the threshold with a slap, and said, "Can the threshold be stepped on?" Before he could say the following words, Man Bao waved his arm and shouted, "Chong Ya, we're going in to see the house." As soon as everyone heard it, they immediately spread their legs and rushed in. Man Bao and Bai Shan rushed to the front, but Bai Erlang quickly caught up with them from behind, surpassed them, and rushed in one breath. Bai Shuping also raised his leg and ran for 2 steps, but when he saw that his parents didn't move, he couldn't help but stop. Daji nodded to him and smiled, "Come on, we will wait for the old lady to go inside slowly." When Bai Shuping heard this, he immediately ran in. Man Bao and the others have already rushed to the first lobby. This is a very large house. When you enter the gate, there is a square open space. There are doors on both sides of the wall. They saw that the house was very big from outside just now, and the main entrance turned far away to be the side entrance. It was followed by a wide porch with many small rooms on both sides, which seemed to be for servants to live in. Beyond the porch is a large yard, with a large plane tree on each side, and some potted plants are placed in the yard, but it looks a little unnerving. In the middle is the main hall for the reception of guests. There are all tables and chairs in it, but there is nothing left on the wall. Obviously, the things that were hung before have been put away. The main hall is very large. A group of teenagers ran in, wandered left and right, and soon disappeared. Man Bao looked up at the tall wooden beams and said in admiration, "This roof is so high." Bai Shan directly asserted, "Before the crown prince, at least those who lived here had to be third-rank officials, otherwise they had to have titles, otherwise such a tall beam would be against the system." Zhou Lixiu had already bypassed a screen and pushed open the door to the other side, shouting, "There's a room here, and it's big, but why is there no bed?" Man Bao followed and said, "This is also a place to entertain guests. The left and right are places to entertain guests. People live in the back." Everyone ran to the back and entered. First, there was a small garden with rock areas and corridors on both sides. Through the corridors, you could go to the front, back and left and right. Instead of looking left and right, they went straight to the back. After a short passage, he saw a courtyard with a blank plaque. Bai Shan said, "This is the main courtyard." Everyone pushes the door in. This yard is slightly larger than the backyard of Changqing Lane where they live now. Everyone rushed in to see it, and found that not only the main house is large, but also the study room equipped with it, and even a small kitchen, which can be said to have everything. There is a courtyard behind the main courtyard, but it is slightly smaller than the main courtyard, and it also has all the internal organs. Further down is a large garden. It is really big, and it is comparable to the garden of Bai Shan's family in Qilai village. You must know that the Bai Shan family's garden in Qilai village can run horses. Entering the garden, the teenagers cheered immediately, especially at this time of spring, when hundreds of flowers were in full bloom. Even though the garden was not well groomed and was overgrown with weeds, everyone thought it was very beautiful. Zhou Lijun ran wild for a while, and then happily said with his sister, "Great, I won't be afraid to run into my sister-in-law and Bai Shan when I go to the garden in the future, which makes me embarrassed to go to the garden." Zhou Liru also thought it was good, "Then we can open a piece of land to grow vegetables." Zhou Lijun nodded, "Absolutely." Man Bao is also very happy. With such a big house, she can buy more flowers and plants. Zhou Lixiu and the others had already run away to the left and right. They only walked the center line just now, and there are yards and gardens on the left and right. Pushing open the connecting courtyard gates, they discovered that the house is really big. There is a long corridor on the left that leads to the side door. There are 4 courtyard gates on one corridor, and one courtyard door connects to the other courtyard. Push the door and go in. There are basically 2 small entrances inside, a corridor with a main hall, and 3 main courtyards in the back, wing rooms on both sides, and a small courtyard in the middle. These 4 courtyards have front and rear doors, which can be connected to each other or closed to form a courtyard. The only downside is that each yard looks exactly the same at first glance. Bai Erlang gets dizzy after turning around twice. "Didn't I just enter this yard?" He didn't think it was fun here, so he simply went through the young men on the left and entered the main hall, and then went from the main hall to the right. The courtyard over there is more spacious, but it is also interesting. There are also 4 courtyards, but the first one is not inhabited. The room was built to be more spacious. I knew it was a library. The houses on the left and right are also relatively spacious, but they are empty inside, except for some couches. A group of people walked through the entire house like an expedition. Man Bao looked at the time in the system and found that more than half an hour had passed since they walked around. She was stunned. The more Bai Shan looked at it, the more uneasy he felt. He couldn't help but quietly grab Man Bao's hand and said, "Do you like living in a big house?" Man Bao nodded and shook his head again. "It looks good, but it's so big. How long does it take me to visit my home every day?" See you at 10 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1467. The house is very big, so big that Wu Lang was stunned. After walking around, he said, "What kind of house do you want to rent here? Just live here." Saturday Lang also strolled around, and then said, "It's just a little far from the outer city, it's not convenient for us to go in and out. But big is really big, so far, he has never seen such a big house. It's not that I haven't seen it before. Bai Shan's house and Master Bai's house in Qilai village are so big, but the big ones are gardens and courtyards, and there are really not so many rooms." Zhou Lijun touched the carvings on the pillar and asked, "How much did this house sell for?" Mrs. Lu smiled and said, "This house is not easy to buy, but it is not easy to sell. Even if it doesn't live there, it can only be left." The Changqing lane where they lived was also in Chongyuan Square, but the location was different. One was on the innermost side of the square, and the other was on the outermost side of the square. On this side are the houses of various families. Unfortunately, Master Yang and Master Tang's family are one street away from here, one is to the left, and the other is to the right. And there are only 4 households in this whole street, which shows how big this house is. Not to mention Zhou Lijun, Man Bao wants to sell this house. However, Mrs. Lu said that the house was not easy to sell, so Wu Lang went to inquire about it and found that it was really not easy to sell, because no one had thought about buying a house here, and no one had thought about selling a house. After returning from Yaoren, he said to Man Bao, "Don't think about it." Yaoren said that the houses there are generally only confiscated and rewarded, and no one will sell or buy them. Let's move in and live. Man Bao was very reluctant to live in the house in Changqing Lane. It's very comfortable to live here. Friday Lang disagreed. When you live there and occupy a yard by yourself, you will feel comfortable in a short time. Man Bao, do I live in a yard by myself? Will I be afraid? Would you be afraid to ask him? Friday Lang silently looked at Man Bao. But moving is not something that can be done in a short time, especially when everyone is still very busy. Although there is furniture in the house over there, many things are not there. We have to move there little by little, so we are not in a hurry. Bai Shan and Man Bao didn't know the origin of the house until they went to see the 3 patients in Jingzhou Mansion. Yang Heshu agreed to translate for Man Bao and the others. He could speak several kinds of Hu language, so when he saw 3 high-nosed and deep-eyed people in Jiaokang, he changed 3 kinds of Hu language in a row, and finally found a Hu language that he could communicate with them. So he carefully asked about the meteorite falling according to Man Bao's meaning. Although the stone was not dug by them, the craftsman who carved it was their family. The craftsman told them where and how the stone fell, so they really knew. Yang Heshu also drew a picture based on their description, which simply marked the location of their village and the approximate location of the landing. Of course, they didn't know the exact location, they could only say how long it was going in the direction of the afternoon sun, so Yang Heshu could only roughly mark it. It can be seen that Man Bao and the others seemed to want to find this thing by themselves, so Yang Heshu simply asked them about Jiaokang's customs and some forces. Unfortunately, they were all slaves of the previous royal family, and they had never been to their market before, so they couldn't say anything except for some customs. The 3 of them, especially the conscious 2, were a little annoyed and felt that they couldn't help Man Bao. In the past few days, their health has improved a lot. Although they cannot speak the language, they also know that their poison has been cured by this little girl. What they always thought was a curse turned out to be poison. They were very grateful to Man Bao, and they all wanted to repay her, but they didn't have anything, and she couldn't understand what they said, and really didn't know how to repay her, so they could only say, "If the little genius doctor goes to Jiaokang in the future, as long as you speak, we will lead the way for the little genius doctor." Yang and Shu relayed their words. Bai Shan was stunned and asked, "Why, do you want to stay in the capital?" The 2 nodded together, and even the people lying down nodded, saying, "The capital is fine, We don't want to go back to Jiaokang, our village is a cursed place. Although it has been clarified that it is poison, they still feel that their village is an ominous place, especially considering the strange children born in the past few years. They are even more reluctant to go back. Man Bao and Bai Shan were still a little regretful. They were people who loved their hometown and thought they were the same. They were worried that it would take a long time for them to go back. Seeing them sighing repeatedly, Yang Hesha said, they were still slaves in Jiaokang. Although the prince of Jiaokang died, other nobles took over. They lived a hard life when they went back. It's better to stay in the capital and work as a coolie. It is better for Gao Chang to be a slave. Master Tang also nodded. The slavery in the western regions was much more serious than that in the central plains. Yang Hesha suddenly thought of something and said with a smile, I heard you guys are moving to Days Road. Master Tang was taken aback and asked, Days Road? Yang Hesha smiled and said, I'm afraid you've been busy judging people for the past 2 days. I'm afraid His Royal Highness rewarded the other courtyard on Days Road with a lot of treasures. When I went home yesterday, I heard someone say that our house seems to have moved here. The family is the little genius doctor in the capital. Man Bao said, it hasn't moved yet, but my 5th brother and the others have moved some things over slowly, and we will move together when we are free. Moreover, they paid the rent for June in the courtyard of Changqing Lane, so naturally they were not in a hurry to move. Man Bao asked, Brother Yang, why is the house on Days Road not easy to sell? Yang Hesha was stunned for a moment and then asked, are you going to sell the house? Tang he said speechlessly, you really want to sell it? Are you not afraid to offend the prince and Zhao Qiuagong? Man Bao, reward my house, will I offend them if I sell it? Yang Hesha smiled and said, the prince may not take this matter to heart, but not necessarily in Zhao Qiuagong's mansion. He said, there are 6 sons in the family of Zhao Qiuagong. In addition to the 3 direct sons, there are also 3 concubines. This house on Days Road is unusual. Do you know why Zhao Qiuagong gave this house to the prince? Man Bao and Bai Shan shook their heads together. Yang Heshu looked at Tang He and said with a smile, tell them. Tang He seemed to know these anecdotes very well, and immediately rolled up his sleeves and said, do you know how this house came from? Before the two could answer, Tang He had already said, it was taken after Zhao Qiuagong followed His Majesty into the capital. Why was the late emperor so afraid of today's high power? It is because he has not only made a lot of military exploits today, but he also captured the capital back then. At that time, the late emperor was still in Taiyuan, and the prince was in charge of the provisions for the 3 armies, so he could not get away. Today, as the 2nd son, he took the lead in attacking the capital. Among the people who rushed in with him at that time, Su Qiuagong and others were big and rough, just rushing into the palace, occasionally grabbing a little bit of gold and silver that escaped from the wealthy family. But Zhao Qiuagong came from an aristocratic family. Seeing that so many people in the city ran away, he simply took people to occupy several good mansions. Master Tang said with a smile, now your mansion on Days Road was occupied by Duke Zhao at that time, and the late emperor did not take it back after he entered Beijing. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1468. It's a chaotic world, of course. Even the royal family of Li was born in a wealthy family, but when he entered Beijing, it was noisy and various cases continued. There are too many people robbing merit, gold and silver treasures, land, women, and houses. There were various competitions between military generals, aristocratic families, and wealthy families, and even the royal family ended up in person. The first emperor was generous, and he simply reclaimed most of the mansion, and then rewarded it again. Every time the dynasty is changed, the masters of the inner city houses at the foot of the imperial city have to change. Few of them are bought with money, and most of them are robbed and rewarded. Zhao Qiuagong robbed several houses back then, some of them were given to his subordinates, some to the treasury, and the former emperor gave them back to various heroes, and one was left out. Then the late emperor gave him another house, and after he ascended the throne, he changed it to a bigger one, and the house that had been hidden all along was forgotten like this. Until the 7th year of Dajhen, Zhao Qiuagong's house was unstable. After drinking, Zhao Qiuagong bawled and said that he would give the house to his third son, but the third son was a concubine. Aunt Zhao was unhappy, and after a fight with Zhao Qiuagong, she went to the palace to cry to the queen. At that time, it happened that the queen had a fit of anger, and the prince was young and vigorous. He couldn't see it, and he didn't want these things to disturb the queen, and he and Aunt Zhao's son Zhao Shilang were even better, so he simply pulled Zhao Shilang to find him. "Uncle, I want to snatch this house from him, so that his aunt doesn't have to go into the palace to find his mother." As a result, he took Zhao Shilang to this garden, and at the beginning he praised the plum blossoms in this garden, and was about to continue the next sentence to be in harmony with his cousin's temperament. Zhao Qiuaju, who was having a headache at that time, seemed to immediately. After finding a solution, he immediately gave the house to the prince. There is only one house in this Chongyuan square, and he has 6 sons, besides the heir apparent, there are 5 more. It is not good to give it to anyone, just give it to the prince. Because of this farce, Zhao Qiuagong was impeached by the censor at that time. 2 charges, one is the unrest in the house. The second is to seduce the prince. Zhao Qiuagong was also born in the military. Originally, when he sent the prince's house, he wanted to get rid of the farce at home, and the prince didn't really want to accept it. As a result, this was impeached, and both of them became angry. Zhao Qiuagong thought, what's wrong with me sending my nephew a house? If I am willing, I can also send 10 houses. And the prince thought, what happened to my uncle's house? Why is it alluring? So one was forced to give it away, and the other was to be taken away. Their uncles and nephews were both yours, and I wished, but they went to the courtroom and sneered at the censor, and finally made the censor angry. He was also sent out of Beijing by the emperor to find a reason. So this thing became famous. Master Tang said with a smile, Zhao Qiuagong has many sons, and among them there are concubines. Not all of them are in the same mind as the prince. Day's Road is a good house. If Zhao Qiuagong splits the family in the future, except for the eldest son, the others will definitely be split out. Yes, the place to live here is very particular. Because of this mansion, several young masters in Zhao Qiuagong's mansion have opinions on the prince. The elites, aristocratic families, nobles, and low-level officials in Beijing all have their own places to live. Where you live, it means which part of the world you belong to. Sometimes people's psychology is so subtle. For example, Sun Ge, headed by Duke Shuguo, lived in Yangchangfang next to Kongai Yuanfang, and they were not very far away. In order to disgust Wei Ji, His Majesty gave him a house next to Suguo's mansion. A loud voice and a counselor happened to be in the same place. Wei Ji was so angry that he ran to Anlifang and rented a house. Officials from the poor family of the common people in the DPRK and China like to live in the Anlifang. Later, there were too many children and grandchildren of Wei Ji, and the family was too large to live in. In addition, he swallowed his breath, so he returned to live in the house given by His Majesty, but it was only 2 years ago, and the house was empty. 7 or 8 years. And the powerful, such as the Princess Mansion, Wangye Mansion and the like are scattered in Changlefang and Xingningfang. Kongai Yuanfang is mostly inhabited by aristocratic families, in addition to the Guangdifang area. Anyway, people gather together. The prince gave this house to Manbao. I don't know if it was to promote her or to discuss the people he wanted to discuss. Master Tang often visited their house in Changqing Lane. Knowing that their family was free and undisciplined, he smiled and said, when you move in, You don't need to invite many people to warm the house, just invite some people you know. Everyone is free to eat and eat. Yang Heshu also nodded, give us the next post at that time. He also felt that Man Bao and the others should not get too close to the people in the workshop at this time, as it would have a bad influence on them in the future. Aristocratic families all respect the rules, but sometimes the rules are not so easy to follow. Bai Shan knows this very well. Although Long Zhou doesn't have much memory, he also vaguely remembers some things that were well behaved when he was a child. After entering the capital, Mrs. Lu did not let him live with him. In fact, she did not want to restrain him. But in fact, Mrs. Lu is now a lot more tolerant. If the family in Longzhou lives together, it is impossible for Bai Shan to go in and out with only one good luck. Man Bao knew that the house could not be sold, so he also began to actively plan the move. Of course, she was busy and everyone was not free, so Bai Shan and the others could only go to Days Street to sort things out together in the afternoon after school. Man Bao is the master, so after everyone pushed her back, she decided to live in the main courtyard. Of course, she didn't live alone, she invited Zhou Lijun and Zhou Liru to live together. The two sisters readily agreed, so they also chose a room they liked and occupied it. Mr. Zhuang looked around and felt that the study room in the front yard was the best one. In that whole yard, the main yard was the study room. The left and right rooms were very spacious. One could be chosen as a bedroom, and the other one was okay. It is made into a tea room and a place for classes, so that it is spacious, comfortable, and life is more convenient. So, when Daji was free, he started to move the bed and some shelves there, all of which they had bought before. Man Bao also invited Mrs. Lu to live with the Bai brothers. Man Bao said, there are too few people, the house is so big, it will be lively when there are many people. She said, fortunately, there are small kitchens in each courtyard. Once the door is locked, it is a separate house, and everyone can live their own way. Friday Lang and the others have no problem, because even if they they eat in restaurants, and they don't worry about it at all. Zhou Lixiu and the others can also cook simple meals themselves. Anyway, as long as there is rice and vegetables, the children of the old Zhou family will not go hungry. Bai Erlang was dumbfounded and asked, then what about my elder brother and I, we don't know how to cook. When Mrs. Lu heard that they had already started assigning which day to cook and who to wash the dishes, she couldn't help but say, you guys are short on time. In addition to reading, you also need to study medicine and copy books every day. Where do you have so much time to work on this? She smiled and said, leave the kitchen to me, and eat in one place in the future. See you at 4 p.m. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1469. Seeing that they were out of order, Mrs. Lu simply took over for them. Occasionally when Zhou Lijun, Zhou Liru, and Man Bao were free, she would bring them by her side to teach them how to manage the family. Sometimes Friday Lang couldn't help but stand aside and listen. The family's wisdom in life has been accumulated over hundreds of years, and they have their own rules. Mrs. Lu doesn't think they have to abide by them, but don't make mistakes in general. At least when interacting with people, abide by certain rules, not only to make others comfortable, but also to make yourself comfortable. Zhou Lijun was very interested in this kind of thing, and unexpectedly listened very seriously. While choosing a room and placing utensils according to Mrs. Liu's wishes, while listening to Mrs. Liu's talk about how to communicate with the neighbors in the workshop in the future, everyone slowly moved the things from Changqing Lane to the mansion. Friday Lang and Saturday Lang also occupied a yard and chose a room to live in, but they didn't go home often, and they mainly lived in the restaurant, so they chose a yard close to the side door. Zhou Lizhong chose to share the same yard with them, and also helped Zhou Liwei, who was not in the capital, to occupy a room. Zhou Lixu and Zhou Ligu took Bai Shuping and occupied a yard behind them, while Bai Shan decided to live with Bai Dalan and Bai Erlang, mainly because they fell in love with the yard near the garden, which was also close to the main courtyard. There are vacant rooms in every yard, so they didn't take up the yard, and left 2 yard vacant. Mrs. Lu had sent many people to Zhuangzili and Hualongzhou in the suburbs of Beijing before, and there were not many servants left. She wanted to buy some servants, but when she saw Man Bao and Bai Shan who were reading together, she didn't know what to think, so she pressed the idea down. She took the time to ask Man Bao, "Have you thought about the inscription on the plaque on the gate?" After thinking about it, Man Bao said, "Let's call it Zhozai." Mrs. Lu smiled and nodded, "Then you will soon have someone write the inscription, and I will have someone make a plaque and hang it up." Man Bao went to find Mr. Zhuang. Mr. Zhuang's writing was not bad, but he was not stingy. He directly wrote 2 words to her, and Mrs. Lu had someone take it and ask someone to make a plaque. Now that she has decided to follow the rent and live in, she naturally no longer hesitated, simply opened the box, took out the money and went out to buy a lot of things, and began to arrange the yard they chose to live in. Screens, curtains, bed tents, lamps, and candles needed in each house, as well as bamboo mats, sofas, etc. needed in pavilions and some open houses. When Wu Wulang and the others went in to see it, they didn't think there was anything missing from the mansion. There were tables, chairs, benches, beds, and cabinets. Some houses even have large screens. They can live in them as long as they put some quilts and wooden basins in them, right? Who knew that as soon as Mrs. Lu took over, they knew that there were so many things missing in this house. Zheng's housekeeper has always been worry-free, and now his fighting spirit is also high. When Mrs. Lu is in low spirits, she will go to the mansion to watch. When all the rooms that need to live in are sorted out, and the missing things are filled up one by one, everyone opened their mouths when they went in to see. Zhou Lijun reached out and touched the newly added orchid screen in her house, and sighed softly, "With so many things, you can spend the money to buy a house, right?" Wu Wulang felt the same way, especially when he saw that there were no candles on a light stand, and every lantern under the corridor was very delicate, not to mention that some china and ornaments were added to each room. Thinking that this is Man Bao's future mother-in-law, I feel a little guilty for some reason. Man Bao didn't pay attention to these. She felt that the mansion seemed to have changed after being sorted out by Mrs. Lu and Mrs. Zheng, and it was very beautiful. So she generously took out all the rewards she had received before, and let Mrs. Lu put them all in each room. Mrs. Lu was not polite, and asked people to put all the satin fabrics in the room full of treasures, or put them in the side room next to her. She smiled and said, "No one lives in the side room of the main house. It is usually for children. I have someone change it for you. You can put some rewards in the future, and you can put more clothes in it. Over there, I have someone make a wardrobe and shelves for you. As for those porcelain and ornaments, she mostly put them on the treasure shelf in the main room to fill the facade." Then he opened his own box and took out some calligraphy and paintings from it to hang up. The whole mansion changed instantly. Bai Shan looked at it, and hung the letter that Mr. Zhang gave him, and hung it in the study. While staring at the people who moved all the books from Changqing Lane and arranged them, Mrs. Zheng whispered to her mother-in-law, "Mother, Man Bao is so powerful, she will marry in the future, where can we buy such a big house to match her?" Seeing her worry, Mrs. Lu smiled and said, "Isn't it a good thing that your daughter-in-law is amazing? Don't worry, Shanbao is also amazing. They are still young, and they will definitely leave the capital and go to other places in the future. The capital is just one place. It's just a place to stay." The reason why Mrs. Lu decided to allow Man Bao to move in was precisely because when she went to see 2 children in Changqing Lane that day, she saw them gathered together to look at the sketches of Gao Chang drawn by Master Yang. I only knew that Lord Yang can speak so many languages. I heard that even the Korean language in Jiunan Prefecture can speak the language. Man Bao asked him in a low voice, "Do you want to learn?" "I'm looking for a doctor from the Chinese Academy of Sciences. Dr. Lu does, but he doesn't like me. I don't plan to look for him. I heard that Dr. Zhao from the four schools will also. I plan to visit him sometime." At that time, she stood not far away and watched the two teenagers chatting together, and she knew that they still had a lot to learn and travel in the future. This is just a place for them to stay. Unless Bai Shan returns to the capital to serve as an official in the future, it will be difficult for him to stay in one place for too long. Looking at all the ministers in the DPRK, who did not go up and down, alternating between expatriation and returning to Beijing, who has been in one place for more than 10 years. "So you don't need to be too concerned about where you live," she said. "Manbao will follow Shanbao in the future. With the ability of Shanbao, Manbao will not be wronged. What we need to do now is to keep the family tradition and let them not be wronged. When you suddenly become rich, you lose your sense of proportion. When I first entered Day Street, I would rather keep a low profile than lose my demeanor and mentality in a high profile and make people laugh." In fact, not only the Zhou family, but also she was a little nervous. Although the Bai family came from an aristocratic family, even the direct descendants rarely came into contact with the wealthy families in the capital, let alone their side branches. Mrs. Lu can only remind herself every day that as long as you follow the etiquette, it will always be difficult at the beginning. Mrs. Lu was apprehensive, but the Zhou family, who was completely from the countryside, was not at all apprehensive. They were not familiar with the city people here, so they didn't think much of it at all. Just move a house, go back and say hello to the neighbors. What are they going to do, or what are they going to do? Where do you have time to think so much? See you at 8 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 1470. Mr. Zhuang has also been paying attention, and found that the people of the old Zhou family are adapting very well. They move things there every day when they are free. When talking about getting along with the neighbors, Wu Lang said, "Go back and bring them some pickles." Something like that. Zhou Lijun also said, "The fourth uncle is coming soon, and he will definitely bring the pickles brought by the uncle and mother. When the time comes, it will be divided into small jars, and each person will have a jar. Don't worry, sir, we will definitely prepare gifts." Mr. Zhuang. As for Man Bao and Bai Shan Bai Erlang, they simply don't worry about it. Besides studying and paying attention to the affairs of the court, why should they worry about this kind of thing? They say they are neighbors, but the neighbors are far away. By the way, who are their neighbors? On the other hand, Dalan Bai was still nervous. He was a little uneasy before moving in. "Sir, if the neighbors come to visit, how are we going to entertain them? Mainly 3 families live in one house, how can you say this?" Mr. Zhuang shook his head and said, "Let's learn from your junior brothers and junior sisters. You can see that they never worry about this. By Dalan, isn't that because they didn't expect it? Anyway, whether they were worried or not, they spent a few days in roughly tidying up the house, so they chose a good day and moved things in after they each asked for leave. In the past few days, most of the things have been moved over, and the ones that are still in Changqing Lane are the daily necessities they used to use. Once these things are moved, they will be gathered together." Man Bao lived in the main room. This room was bigger, and even the bed was bigger. She rolled on it happily, and then ran to the other side to see the small study that Mrs. Lu had set up for her. Yes, this time her small study is in her room, and there is a wooden couch by the window with a small low table on it. If she doesn't like to sit at the desk and write, it is not bad to sit on the wooden couch. The main reason is that this window is a rear window. When the window is opened, there is a cluster of roses behind. At this time, several rose trees have buds, which will open after a period of time, which is very beautiful. From a distance, there is a large garden. In order to prevent mosquitoes from entering, Mrs. Lu also made a gauze curtain for her, and put it down in summer, which can not only prevent mosquitoes, but also let the wind blow, which is very comfortable. Bai Shan and their rooms are not so delicate. After everyone moved in, Mrs. Lu began to arrange servants everywhere. Not only the people from the old Zhou family, but also Bai Shan and the others are not used to having servants wait on them, so she only placed 2 concierges at the gate, and the others were on duty everywhere, mainly cleaning and taking care of cars and horses. Work. Because the house is so big, each small courtyard is a little far from the big kitchen, so when you need to use hot water, you need to lift it to the big kitchen. Everyone didn't like to use servants, so they prepared a pot in the small kitchen and planned to heat the hot water themselves. The most convenient one was Manbao and the others, because they lived in the main courtyard not far from the kitchen, and they still carried the wooden basin to the kitchen to wash their faces with warm water in the early morning. This was the first day they lived in the mansion. After washing his face, Manbao couldn't help pinching his waist and shouting loudly, and then went to invite Zhou Lijun and Zhou Liruo, "Let's go to the garden to fight in a while." Zhou Lijun refused, "I'm going to the restaurant after dinner. The 4th uncle should be here in 2 days. We've all moved here. Big brother has to go to the city gate to see, don't let him go astray." Zhou Liruo also refused, "Today, the shopkeeper wants to randomly check the book that I have memorized. I memorized it last night, but I am not very familiar with it. I have to memorize it again while my mind is clear in the morning." Manbao cleaned up and went to the garden. She found an open space and jumped up on her own. When Bai Shan saw that she was playing a strange 5-animal show, he said, "Do you want to learn swordsmanship with me and Daji?" Manbao shook his head, "No, I still have to sprint, it's so tiring." After the exercise, everyone went to the main room to have breakfast. Mr. Zhuang took out the first base invitation to them and said, "According to the list you gave, the post on the conservatory has been written, and it will be set on April 19th. On this day, you are just taking a rest. Such things as posting are naturally left to them, who asks them to be their friends." Mr. Zhuang also invited a few friends, and he posted his posts by himself. Just as he was going out to play today, he brought them along by the way. Manbao found the post for the prince and hesitated, "Do you really want to give this?" Bai Shan said, "Give it, if he came to see him or not, he gave this house away, but we have to give it to us when we move in." Manbao tucked it into his sleeve, intending to turn back and have Lu Yuna bring it to the palace to eunuch Wu. Since they didn't need to go to the palace, Manbao spent more time teaching them. Now Zhenggu and Lu Yuna can sit with her to give prescriptions, although they still use their prescriptions less often. There are not many people invited by Manbao, except for her 3 disciples. There are only doctors and Fu Wenayun in Ji Shitang. Both Master Yang and Master Tang were sent by Bai Shan. The students in the Imperial College are the ones most invited by everyone. Zhou Lixiu and the others also invited their classmates, so they also took away a lot of posts, and everyone dispersed after breakfast. Storekeeper Zhengde received Manbao's invitation and couldn't help but sigh, "It's only been a year of effort, and you've all lived in Chongyuan Square." Manbao looked up at him suspiciously, and the shopkeeper Zheng smiled and said, "It's okay, I just feel that my heart is a little sour, but I'm used to it." Dr. Ding, who was drinking tea by the side, almost sprayed the tea. In fact, few people thought that the prince would give the house of Kongai Yuanfang to Zhou Man, where most of the aristocratic families lived. In the place where everyone lived, a concubine suddenly lived in. Although he was a genius doctor, it felt very strange. However, no one can express any opinions, because this is sent by the prince, and it is not a gift list from the treasury or the internal treasury that the emperor gave away. Moreover, when the Zhou family began to move things in, King Guangping also came to Beijing. So the case that had been on hold was restarted. During that time, Qiao Zhong fought and quarreled every day, and everyone was not in the mood to pay attention to the Zhou family's move. When I was paying attention, I heard that the Bai family also moved in together. Everyone felt a little better. Although the two families lived together before they were officially married, it was common for relatives to live in, and it was not unusual in aristocratic families. After all, the Bai family came from an aristocratic family, and with them watching, the Zhou family shouldn't be rude, right? The Zhang family and the Du family, who are neighbors to the Zhou family, thought silently. As a result, the Zhou family did not pay attention to the thoughts of the neighbors at all. Wu Lang and the others moved in the day before, and they had to hurry back to the restaurant to open the door the next day to welcome guests. If the shop is closed for one day, they will lose a day's turnover. Is there any